Welcome to another episode of That's Some Crazy Shit with Kelly and James. My name is Kelly, and my co-host
is James. That's me. What's up, my friend?
Nothing. Hanging out, shooting the shit with you. We were just having an interesting conversation before I hit record.
I know, we should have been recording that.
No shit.
That would be a random bullshit.
It could be if we're going to rehash that same conversation.
Yeah, let's do it.
Won't
That's
be the
called
same,
a teaser.
though.
That's called a teaser.
Is that a teaser for random bullshit?
Yeah, because now people want to, God, I better listen to the whole episode to
Oh
see.
my God, what are they going to say?
Yeah.
Anyway, but it should be more like, who is our guest? So our guest today does something that you, again, produced. Look at you out there getting guests. You had went to
it was called Phenomicon.
And you met?
His name was Christopher
His
Duncan.
name is Christopher.
His name is Christopher Duncan. And he is a remote viewer.
What is a remote viewer, James?
Well, I'm going to let Christopher tell us. How about that?
There you go. So I guess you're ready to get to it?
Let's do it.
Welcome to the podcast, remote viewer Christopher Duncan.
This meeting is being recorded.
Thanks for joining us, Christopher. We appreciate it. How are you?
I'm well. How are you guys?
Doing good here. How about you, Kelly?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm excited. So let's just get to it.
All right.
Yeah, I like the energy.
So let me just tell our listeners how I found you, Christopher. I had gone to a Phenomicon up in Vernal, and there were, and I'm sorry I missed your presentation because it sounds like it would have been very interesting. But there was Expedition Bigfoot there, and they were talking about how you had been a guest on there. And I didn't know that. I thought it was very interesting. And then it's funny, Christopher, because that episode, I think I watched just like last week. It came on.
Really?
Yeah, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I'm one of these, there's no coincidences, so. But, so you're a remote viewer. And that's how you got involved with that. How did they decide to get a hold of you and talk you into finding Bigfoot?
Oh, man. So that's I'll condense that story a little bit. So long story short, I kind of live in two worlds. I'm very deep into the sort of science and engineering world, as well as into this world. Some would argue they're the same, but part of being in the technical world is I was actually being paid by a very large company to live in Washington, D.C., where I normally lived, or near there, and commute to Los Angeles. So I was home for 5 days a month, and every other day of the month I was in a hotel room working and like building satellites and stuff. While there, I ran into Mr. Tom Green, sort of the godfather of prank comedy, who when I was a kid I kind of looked up to. I mentioned that to him, and then we hung out for a while. I ended up on his podcast, and then he referred me to Russ Accord because of my technical work. Russ brought me on to Expedition Bigfoot Season 2, doing technical work with some antennas that I was doing a PhD in, and then I became friends with some of the cast members. Meanwhile, parallel to all of this, I had previously worked for the federal government for 15 years, and I ended up working somewhere where they put a lot of people who had previously done remote viewing in the official government programs before they were disbanded and declassified. And I was, because of that same sort of coincidental antenna work that I was on Expedition Bigfoot with, I was talking about my PhD work in that, and one of them said, hey, we kind of explored the same theory when it came to remote viewing. What do you think about that? And I had never heard of it before. They explained what it was, and I said, all right, let's try that. And so the next, they surprised me 3 or 4 days later, I think the next week, and like, you're going to try it yourself here, and walk me through it. And it turned out I had a knack for it, really good. I explained this to Expedition Bigfoot Cast, and when we were like in between shows, like talking, and Ronnie LeBlanc said, "We've got to have you on again." And then I came on, and I was really disappointed how much they cut out of that show where I did the remote viewing, because there was so much more, but it was still good.
So real quickly, Christopher, why don't you tell our listeners what exactly is remote viewing?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question, because it's one that I feel passionate about. Because a lot of people, if you just hop on Google real quick and you just type in like remote viewing, somewhere around 2 or 3 links down, you're going to get into like the Reddit, and you're going to see a whole bunch of like posts that are all very either very close but not quite it, or just way off the deep end of what it is. But remote viewing is a phenomenon of viewing a location, like a person, place, or thing, going on anywhere else in the world right now. A lot of people confuse it with like astral projection, like leaving your body, which it is definitely not, or talking to, some type of spirit or something. It's definitely not that. It's not predicting the future. There's a little bit to like some things, very, very near future, like say within 24 to 48 hours, can be kind of vaguely described, because some of those things have already been set in motion. In the past, you can go a little bit further back, but it's not a predict the future kind of thing. But the government was using it for a period of, if I do my math right, just over 20 years. And they were using it as an intelligence collection method against the Soviets during the Cold War, which we learned about it because Soviet defectors said, "Hey, we know all this stuff about you, and this is how we found it out."
Wow.
Can anybody do it? Can anybody learn remote viewing?
Yes, in my opinion. It's also a little bit like painting. Some people will never move past finger paints, and some people are Michelangelos, and they can do it beautifully. So I've seen a couple people who just couldn't quite get it, and these were the people that were so blocked up that in their mind they physically just could not grasp that something they don't understand might be real. And they struggle a lot. One of them eventually worked through it and actually was pretty successful at it, but for the most part, everyone does. In fact, in the seminars at Phenomicon that I gave 3 workshops. I think we only had, out of like 100 people, we only had 2 or 3 people who didn't produce results.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, and these were totally blind. Like I carried them in my back, the targets in my backpack that was with me and locked in a hotel room. And then, I went in, like they had no more information than just a couple letters and numbers that were on a manila envelope. And I said, describe it. And we had people drawing pictures of the place I had targeted or the event and describing it accurately.
Do you find that there's a certain type of person who's more open-minded to this? Maybe the younger or the older, or is there even really an area like that?
Age-wise, no, but I'm finding it's people who have a sort of, we'll say, academic intelligence that's been raised up a little bit, like they've gone to school, but at the same time they have a creative and artistic side to it. I want to be really distinct by saying academic intelligence, because I want to recognize there's a whole lot more types of intelligence, and not having gone to school doesn't make you, unintelligent. But people who tend to have gone through the rigors of like an academic program of some type, but at the same time are creative, tend to do very well. We'll just say balanced.
On average, and maybe you can't answer this because it might be different for everybody, but if somebody wanted to learn how to do this, like what would they do, and how long usually on average does it take somebody to learn this? You did it I guess at your seminar in that moment, right? So not long, but how do you do it? Is it like a meditation? Is it?
No. So the method I teach, essentially, you kind of need more than one person. So like if you, for example, Kelly, wanted me to look at something, like whatever, like let's hypothetically say you lost your glasses.
Okay.
And you couldn't find them, I would tell you never to tell me anything about that. Like, you would talk to someone else and say, I've lost my glasses, I want Chris to remote view it, create a target. That person would then write, where is Kelly's where are Kelly's glasses? Fold it up, put it in an envelope, and sort of assign a set of coordinates to it. Like, those really don't matter, they're more symbolic. So it could be like ABC 1 2 3 or any mix. And then that person would give me the envelope. I would take a piece or not give me the envelope, but hold the envelope and give me the coordinates. And then I would write down the coordinates ABC 1 2 3 and sort of let my pen just kind of flow, create like a line. And then using the pen on the paper as like a focus line, I would start focusing in really hard, not knowing what the target is, just knowing I'm looking for something. And you just start writing down impressions that come to mind. And then it's, there's a lot more to it as you get more advanced, but that's very simple, very basic. And that you can, if you're very inclined toward it, you can be doing that within an hour.
Oh, wow.
So obviously it's real because the government actually was doing this and believed it was real. But can you tell us any like stories from those times you remote viewing for the government?
Well, so let me clarify. I wasn't doing it on behalf of the federal government. I was in an office where some of those guys used to work. Gotcha. And so we were doing it as like a spare time thing. As far as I know, there was no sanctioned remote viewing going on.
Gotcha.
Real quick to the part about it knowing it's real. There's a report that a lot of people will reference that the CIA generated. It was research done by 4 doctors, I believe 3 or 4 doctors, to analyze all the results. And the first sort of 3 or 4 pages basically say, this is not good for intelligence work. This is just not good. But as soon as you go deeper into it, something like page 40 says we need to stop funding research into how this works and start funding making it better. This actually, it's almost like on purpose, like no one's going to read past page 3 if it's all negative. Yeah. But that's just, it's 40 something pages of, yep, it works. It might not be best for intelligence gathering, but it does work. We need to, continue. Now, like interesting things, I think probably, so my biggest, and let me classify or characterize this as you'll never be 100% successful. So my biggest error was a target and I couldn't figure out what it was. I just got this almost like need to pull away and close my eyes. And I swore I kept seeing my reflection. Like it's like what is this? I can't get it. Well, the target was the bean in Chicago and very reflective. So I was like seeing my reflection. So I categorized that one as a failure in some sense. Biggest success was I was doing well enough that the gentleman who taught me this said, I got something for you. You have to try this. You got to find something. And so he brought in a target and he said, all I'm going to tell you is here's the coordinates and you're looking for something. Real world. This is real world. You're looking for something. And so I started describing, like, I feel like, this is a circle. I thought it was a coin, like one of the the I Ching Chinese coins with a hole in the center.
Yeah, those.
So this feels like a coin like that, and it feels like it's been meshed in the ground. This belongs in a set. There's like 2 pieces, belongs together with something, and it's like there's a building here, and I was like, this building. I can see wherever this item is. I can kind of see up and see the foundation of the building, and then where the siding starts. And I can see there's a path or a driveway or something that comes around from the back, and there's sort of landscaping going on, and I feel like this thing has been dropped and stepped on or buried. And so I drew the outline of how I thought this building looked, and I marked an X and I said, it's right here. Like whatever this is right here. Well, then he opened it up, and so first of all, his first remark was, oh shit, when I was done. The general rule is you don't, when the target here is giving me a target, like I'll talk and ask questions, but they don't answer anything. I'm talking to myself because you don't want to get this. Ideally, they don't even know what the target is because you've got so many targets stacked up. It could be any one of 100. but you don't want a confirmation bias of just saying, yeah, keep going down that road. So, but he said, oh shit, when I was done, and he opened it up, and he's like, what you just drew is an outline of my house, and what I was looking for is a wedding ring I lost 20 years ago, and I lost it when we were doing landscaping work. And where you drew the X is where we built the deck. And so he actually went out and found it later that night. It was about like 2 or 3 inches in the ground.
Wow. That is not a coincidence, people.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah, there's, I'm very open-minded, but I'm also very heavily skeptic. Like, there should be a way to demonstrate things, all things. And this is one thing that this is one area of all the other areas of what we would just call like weird stuff or strange things that in my mind is very easily demonstrated.
So when you were with the guys from Expedition Bigfoot, were you remote viewing for them to find Bigfoot?
Yeah, I was. There was a little bit of structural difference in how that was done because I had to know what the target was because I knew everyone. So ultimately we call it front loading. So you know information in advance. It's typically considered a bad thing. Some things it's fine, you can work through it. So they had me remote viewing where I thought Bigfoot was, and I started describing areas and things. And what didn't make it into the show is I basically came up with a list of 15 things. Like, you're going to see, like, there's this water and there's like a cliff nearby. There's some type of fence or wood or log stacked. There's a bridge with a tree down. There's hair caught in a fence and things like that. And instead of like saying, Bigfoot is right here, what I ended up actually describing is everything they were going to have happen that night and the next night. Like, it became a checklist, like, by time, you're going to run into here, then you're going to see this, and you're going to see that. And I actually found the hair of whatever it was where I told them it would be.
Okay, I have to ask you, Christopher, are you a believer in Bigfoot?
I'm a skeptic. I'm a skeptic.
That's
I won't say I'm a disbeliever, but I am not a all-in believer. There might come a day, it might maybe tomorrow they'll find one. I don't know, but until then, I kind of lean toward disbelief, healthy skepticism.
No, and that's good. That keeps us honest. Healthy skepticism.
Yeah.
It really does. So when you're remote viewing, like how long can you remote view, or is there like a length of time, or do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. I found each session takes less than 15 minutes. I think the longest one I ever had to do was 30 minutes. And that's just because there's so much information coming that I just kept going down the line, focusing, like, holy crap, more and more and more and more. But usually within 10 or 15 minutes, you get everything and it's just over. You get the same stuff over and over again, so you're done. And I've also found I can do like 2 to 3 targets a day.
Wow.
So where is this information coming from?
That's a good question. That's the mystery of the day. My basic theory is that there's probably, so depending on how deep we want to go, most people think about energy. Let's go with electricity, for example. There's the electrical field, and that's what most people just consider. But there's also an associated magnetic field with it that is completely operates like in a different, whole field. There's no other way to put it. There's a, in physics, there's the E field, there's the B field, there's the H field, all these different fields. My theory is there's some other field, and some of the scientific paperwork that I published has kind of shown that some of those fields behave differently than what we originally thought. And there's probably a field that we have not quite yet discovered fully, and our brains are essentially like an antenna. And it's a matter of sort of quieting everything and sort of sorting through to get the right thing, and that the methodology is more of a focusing on that. It's kind of like, some people say that if you can, transfer or read minds and sit here and like send a thought to you, that energy is spinning. It's not going like we think. It's not going out and hitting you, but it's, radiating outside of the skull and hitting, but your brain isn't picking it up. it's not the antenna to receive it. There might be a field where there's some form of receipt device of that, like what's called a J field. I don't know, but, out there.
Called the C field, Christopher.
Yeah, that'd be nice. I'm pretty sure C field's taken already.
Oh.
I only know the E and C field, or E and B field, very well. So.
And so, I guess when you're remote viewing, it's like, is this how you make your living, Christopher? Is remote viewing?
No.
I was gonna say,
no, not at all.
Do people pay you for this? But do people pay you to do this?
I have been paid. I try not to take on income produced. Like, it's just something well, for one, it's not, I don't like being able to get paid for something and give you an 80% chance it's right. Like, if you're going to pay me for something, I want it to be 100%.
Okay.
For me to feel morally okay taking money, I have to do it on a sense of, this might be wrong. If it is wrong, come back. And if it is wrong, come back. And just keep coming back. We'll figure this out, kind of thing. Which then takes a lot of time. And, like, if you're trying to find a wedding ring, I might hit it the first time. Or it might be 20 times and I never hit it, So I don't do that. For a living, I do a lot of technical work. Like, I've built satellites, designed satellites, things like that. So I work on the scientific and engineering side. And then I kind of do this for fun. Well, I'm thinking about instead, like, having group lessons at like an affordable rate.
Oh.
Where I'm at with that is I kind of want to get some way where I can say, it's an affordable rate, but if you have an income problem, we're not going to turn you away. Like, let us know. Like, I have some hang up about, I don't want anybody to be denied an experience and to learn because their job or what circumstances don't allow them to pay, kind of thing. So I'm figuring out something around that.
It's
Very
funny
cool.
because you're a science person, right? Got this very analytical science side of you. And some people would say, because James asked you where the information came from, you gave him a very kind of scientific answer, best that a field. Some people, would call it the woo-woo or a download from spirit or whatever. So it's interesting how you've got science behind what some would say isn't scientific, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, there's no, there's no one can figure it out. The government did experiments on doing this in the ocean because salt water blocks a lot of frequency transmissions in fields, all kinds of things, and they worked out. One of my goals is to find some science behind it. Like, statistically, by numbers, one, it's duplicatable. Like, Stanford Research Institute took this on for a while. Major companies have taken it on. They've done it over and over. They've said, yep, there is something to this. Statistically significant results, better than chance. But that's about as far as we can get to it. And I wish I could close that gap. I don't know that I will be the one, but I'll keep trying.
So, Christopher, when we were up in the Vernal area, there's Skinwalker ranches up there. Have you ever tried to do that just on your own? How'd you feel about that up there?
I did not try to do it. There are a bunch of places I want to try. I just need to eventually get someone who's willing to create a handful of targets, 20 targets, and 3 of them are places I want to look at, and then mix them all up and go through day by day and hit them with me. So I don't know what it is, and the person giving me the target doesn't know what it is, and I'm viewing it, and it might be the Eiffel Tower, or it could be Skinwalker Range, or like the one target we want to hit, and just so it's the goal is just to be blind and have no bias.
So is that the best way to remote view, is to not know where you're going to be looking? If so, you know what I mean? Just be totally blind. Is that the best way to do it? Absolutely the best, because if you have any sort of pre-bias or front-loading going on, your emotions, and the biggest problem with remote viewing when you're doing it is self-doubt and your mind filling in the blanks. So you want to minimize that as much as possible. If I were viewing you right now, I've got some conscious and subconscious assumptions about you, and those are going to filter into what I'm viewing. Like, okay, well, we're poor vision, things like that. Even if I don't actively think that, they'll pop up.
So more blind is better.
Gotcha. Very cool. It's very interesting.
It is. So where would you like to view, Christopher, if you could view something?
I almost hesitate to say it, but I would really like to view Area 51.
That's a good one.
I'd like to do that. I'd probably like to look at the Kremlin, inside the Kremlin, what's going on.
Yeah.
Probably a good target would be, especially given the situation of the world right now, like a good target would be what's going on with Vladimir Putin or something like that. Or, where is Vladimir Putin? And kind of look and describe those surroundings. I have an interest for that kind of stuff. So
I'd like to know where he is at too.
Yeah, because you get a lot more context. So you might be, there are people around him, or I feel sick, so he's probably ill. Those kind of things, I feel like this is insane. Like I feel this sort of unbalanced insanity, kind of thing, or who knows.
So you can actually pick up how people are feeling physically and emotionally?
Yeah, you kind of get impressions of it. I have made a mistake before in viewing a relationship from the past, because you can look a little bit to the past, that ended very badly. And I ended up finding out that she had an affair also. And from viewing that, but at the same time though, I refelt my emotions, and I also felt how she was feeling and kind of how the other person was feeling. And it really reopened a lot of old wounds, but at the same time, it almost felt like we're only supposed to experience emotions in like 2D, but I had somehow just forced 4D into it. And almost like I couldn't handle all of that at once. I wasn't meant to feel the other person's emotions, kind of thing.
Wow.
It was rough. That person and I are still friends to this day, and so I was able to confirm everything with her, once I kind of explained. But that's a mistake I won't make again. Looking at that probably set me back a week on recovering from that relationship.
Wow, that's something. That's a heavy one, though.
Yeah, it was very heavy. It was. So sometimes you get these impressions. Same people have different skills and abilities. The guy who taught me, Carl, very accurate with color and drawings. I'm more active or more accurate with impressions. So mine are like, this feels like this. Or I keep hearing the sound of waves. And my colors tend to tint darker. So, when I was looking at his wedding ring, I said, this is like a dark brown copper. In reality, it was gold. And so I've learned I have to offset. Like if I'm describing something and the color's darker, to bring it up a few tones, and then that's what the real color is.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, Michael, it has been a pleasure to have you on and learn about remote viewing. I always thought it was something different, so it's nice to actually finally know more about it. And if you ever do decide to do classes, is it something that you could teach people through Zoom?
Yeah, I fully intend to do it through Zoom as much as possible. Because going back to the money thing, I'd like people from anywhere to learn.
Yeah, very cool. But when you get that together, please let us know.
Yeah, I'll sign up.
Will do.
Yeah,
right,
definitely. Let us know. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you guys for having me.
We talked about remote viewing, not on air, but before, several times. And it was funny because we're like, and it's weird how it works out this way. We're like, we should get, it'd be nice if we had someone come on. What happens? I go to see something about Bigfoot and find a remote viewer.
I thought remote viewing was something else. I didn't know that you have to have several targets and the way that he did it. I thought basically you could sit in a room. Well, that's the way that we had a guest on before. I believe she was a psychic. I cannot remember who it was, but she said she could remote view, that she could be on the phone with her friend and her friend was looking at a house, and she could go and look at the house too and tell her everything that was wrong with her or whatever. So I thought remote viewing was one way, but now I find out it's another way. So maybe there's just all different ways to do it.
No, I think there are several techniques, Kel, because I've seen both techniques used. Like the way Christopher says with the envelope and targets, and then I've seen people they were actually investigating, looking for UFOs, and they told them just to look in the area of the sky and tell them what they saw, and then they described like a UFO and an entity and stuff. So, but it was cool. I'm sorry.
What is this that you're talking about?
They used remote viewing to prove the existence of UFOs, and so they told them, we want you to look at this part of the sky this time. And then they had cameras set up, and they had the software to track satellites and airlines and all this shit. They see this light going past, and at that time the remote viewers started describing, I'm seeing this light, it's flashing on and off, and then they described this entity inside this light.
So who is they? Who did this?
This I saw was on the History Channel, I believe.
Really?
Yes. But it's stuff like that is, they have it, they'll probably have it on like Mystery Quest, and and it's probably mostly the same type of story. But remember I had told you about how, I think it was the 70s or whatever, where they did the Soviets lost the plane and they couldn't find it, and we used a remote viewer to find it, and we went in there and got their shit off their plane before they found it. The government, they don't waste money in stuff that don't work.
Really?
Serious. I'm honest, really. Okay,
repeat that one more time for me. I want to make sure I fully understood what you said. Say that again. What?
Now listen. Okay.
I'm listening.
The government will not waste money on things that don't work, that aren't valid. So, if they're putting money into remote viewing, why? Because there's something to it. If they're putting money into studying UFOs, why? Because there's something there. You know what I mean? These people need to kind of. The big government don't do anything for just no reason. There's got to be a return.
Who are these people?
The government.
Said
that's a whole. We could go down another rabbit hole with that one. We better stop.
I'm just wondering because you're like saying they and these. I'm like, well, wait a minute, who? What are we talking about?
It's that whole, there's a different government running stuff, conspiracy. So maybe we'll have someone come on and tell us about conspiracies. I don't know.
You know what? I absolutely would love for somebody to come on and talk conspiracy theories, because there's so many of them to cover. We don't have to cover them all, but if somebody was an expert regarding, whatever conspiracy theory or whatever, or multiple conspiracy theories, because that's their jam, then yeah, I would love to meet that person and be able to talk to them.
Yeah,
and the reason why I said it like that is because I'm putting it out into the ether. So maybe one day we'll have somebody who will know all about conspiracy theories. That would be cool.
Hey, we've been on a roll,
We've been on a roll.
We have.
Let's wrap it up, my friend. You can get us on all the social medias. Not all of them, but a couple of them, like Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn. You can get us.
We are on LinkedIn finally.
We are finally. LinkedIn allows the word shit. For a while, Facebook they did not. Facebook still will not. Instagram either. Well, no, Instagram does. But LinkedIn finally allowed the word shit. I was so happy when they said, yes, we're okay with it. I was like, yes, thank you, LinkedIn. Thank you so much.
All these platforms will allow fans-only pages where you can sell all these provocative pictures. They showing them on Facebook, but we can't say shit. Okie dokie. Just checking.
They have morals, James. Metaverse.
Yeah, they got
Metaverse has morals.
That's
Okay,
true. They gotta
Metaverse
draw the
has
line.
meta morals, and they do draw the line at
That shit.
Okay, so cut them a break. Let's wrap it
All
up,
right,
my friend.
Until next time, people, keep your minds open.